Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the RacingBet Preview, brought to you live and brought to you by tab.com.au this week. Previewing Group 1 Black Caviar Lightning Stakes Day at Flemington, as well as the triple header of Group 2s at Rosehill in Sydney with the Hobartville Stakes, probably the pick of them. My name's Tim Geers, I'm your host, joined by Trent Crebbin. How's things over there, Trent?
Yeah, really well. The Lightning Stakes is a really good race. Sometimes it can just be a little bit iffy, this race, but we've got all the big guns that have shown up. Eduardo, Master Crusader, both down from Sydney. It's one of the best Lightning fields, if not the best ever. It should be a great race.
Of course, the Lightning headlining proceedings at Flemington there. You've also got 2 Group 3s and 2 listed races on the card. At Rosehill, we've got the Hobartville, the Silver Slipper, and also the Millie Fox Stakes, all at Group 2 level. Talk to me about the track conditions at Flemington, what you expect ahead of this week.
Good for at Flemington. Rail true. It'll play as it always does. They've had a few weeks off to prepare it for this meeting, and it'll play fairly and it'll play really well.
Over in Sydney, I think once again this week I read the forecast for something like 8 to 20 mils of rain on Friday. So once again, like we said last week, if that falls, we'll definitely be playing in the soft to heavy range. If it doesn't, we're probably going to start the day maybe in a soft 5 or so, which could improve. But definitely keep an eye on what happens on Friday. I'm kind of planning towards playing in the soft range at Rosehill. Hopefully every horse gets their chance and we don't get a monorail, but typically when it does rain, you'll find them coming off the rail. So let's hope for a fairer track than what we saw. I think it was last time at Rosehill when it was just a 1-lane highway up the rail a few weeks back. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, Trent.
Yeah, when Animo was first up in the expressway, I think it was. It was shocking. It was worth about 3 lengths, if not more. It was horrible. So hopefully they've had the time to adjust that and it plays a little bit more fairly on Saturday.
Let's hope. Now, I think we're looking, since we kicked off the show in the new year, I think I'm looking for 3 straight best bets in Sydney. Your best last week, I think, was scratched. It might be second time lucky this time.
It lost.
Oh, I tried to cover for you then.
Yeah, disappointing. But we had a good day yesterday. I think out of betting races yesterday, I think 5 betting races had 4 winning results. So, we've got a bit of confidence heading into Saturday, sure.
Very good. Now, whatever you are watching us on live tonight, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, whatever it is, make sure you throw a like our way, especially if you're on YouTube or Facebook, like our page, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a thing when we do go live or when we post new videos. Every little bit helps us. And like I said at the top of the show, this episode is brought to you by tab.com.au. So if you're having a bet, you're backing some of our best bets, make sure you do so at Tab this week. Let's get straight into our best bets. We won't waste any time, but I'll just draw on the Lightning quickly before we get stuck into the full Lightning preview. You mentioned there it's a very good field. What do you make of this whole J-Mac situation, riding Home Affairs rather than Nature Strip?
I wouldn't read anything into it personally. He's got a big association with Coolmore, who obviously own Home Affairs and will, when he probably gets sent to stud eventually, will be standing there. I just think that he gets a lot of deals, gets a lot to ride a lot of their horses overseas if he sticks with Home Affairs over Nature Strip. So I think if there was no strings attached, he had the choice, he'd choose to ride Nature Strip, but long term it works out better for him. So if you're thinking that J-Mac's chosen Home Affairs because he thinks Home Affairs is a better chance than the Lightning, I'd probably disagree and say that, it's just behind the scenes stuff with Coolmore.
100% agree. Yeah. And one thing I've learned, since I've managed jockeys, is there's a lot that goes into choosing rides. It's very rarely as simple as this is the better horse. There's a lot more that can go on behind the scenes that can influence a jockey's decision on which horse to ride. So not every time you see, for perfect example is J-Mac, he's chosen Home Affairs because he thinks it's a better chance. I guarantee there's probably a handful of reasons that have gone into that decision, which it's kind of changed my form analysis a little bit, because it's very easy just to see this jockey jumping off this horse to ride this one. In certain jurisdictions, it is like that, but certainly since I've taken over managing jockeys, I can guarantee there's a lot that goes into the selection of which horse to ride, and it's not always, the best chance that you're riding. So Interesting anyway, adds another layer, I suppose, to an already fascinating race. But we'll get into that in a second. Let's kick off with our best bets on the program. We'll start with you at Flemington. You're coming up nice and early in the day. Race 2, number 5, TUVALU, currently even money with tab.com.au.
Yeah, so he was my best bet. I think it was 2 weeks ago. He was about $2, and I couldn't believe we were getting black odds about him. And he was backed into $1.50 on race morning, woke up and had been scratched overnight, which was a little bit disappointing. He had an elevated temperature there, I think. So he's had a couple of weeks to get over that. Look, his first up run, his win at Warrnambool was very, very good. He was backed into $1.28 there. He was about a fraction of a second off the track record, and he did it out of second gear. So, look, I think he's a really smart horse. Second up last prep. It took Thunderstruck to really knuckle down to beat him by half a length. From barrier 6 here, he's going to roar 40. Either leads or sits outside Gentleman Roy and just pours on the pressure, and I don't think anything can sustain his cruising speed. So I think you're probably getting that $2 quote again, just with that little tiny setback, but trusting Lindsay Smith to have him fit enough for the mile, and if he's at his best, I think he'll be far too good.
Very good. Race 2, number 5, Trent's best bet of the day at Flemington. Let's hope we get the money early. My best bet at Rosehill is going to come up late in the card, and it's rare that I pick one at this sort of price, my best bet. It's a bit out of my wheelhouse, but like I say, every week in Sydney, it's a very difficult card, and this was one that I saw straight away and kind of wanted to bet. This is race number 7 on the card, and I'm with horse number 8, MIGHTYBEEL, Chris Waller and Tommy Berry. Now, it's very hard to be confident in a race that Waller's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 runners. I guarantee something else will probably win now. But I thought this is the best of his chances with Tommy Berry booked, like I said. He rode this horse a couple of weeks ago. I think this was the day that might have been a different day. But basically, Frosty Rocks led this race. I think Lakeen sat in behind. And they basically ran the quinella of the race. This horse settled back in the field, probably last, I think. And he ran home into 7th. Now, while that doesn't look like a flattering performance, he actually reeled off the second fastest final 200 of the race. And he also recorded, I think, the fastest final 400 of the race. So it definitely was a race that favoured those on speed. That was his first run back from an 8-week let-up. He's undefeated second up from a spell. So if you consider that somewhat of a short spell, he's definitely going to improve getting up in distance with that run under his belt. I've got the replay here for us to look at while we're chatting. You can see him coming right down the outside here with the white cap in those navy sort of colours. You can see Frosty Rocks. It's out in front, Lakeen and the Godolphin colours getting into second there. So I thought, all things considered, MIGHTYBEEL's run was relatively good. Since coming to Australia, I think he's had 4 wins and a further 2 second placings from about 8 starts. So clearly, he's improved under Chris Waller, and I think this is a suitable race, despite there being 6 Waller runners in the field. I will be saving on horse number 13, Too Much to Bear. He's done very little wrong in his career with 10 starts, 5 wins, and 4 minor placings. He's coming off a last start win. Draws the inside 53 kilos for Karen McAvoy. So I thought he looked a logical danger, but pretty confident that MIGHTYBEEL can give this a real good shake at $4.60, and I thought that was a good enough price to have a good bet. That is race 7, number 8. All right, something for the punters at better odds. Trent, your best value bet of the day at Flemington comes up in race number 4. You with horse number 4. I'm going to have a crack at this. RAKOMELO at $13.
Yeah, RAKOMELO. Yeah, we'll go with that. He's a Godolphin colt down from Sydney. First up, he ran on that day that was particularly biased at Rosehill. I think it was the Cannonbury Stakes for the boys. I think that's the one it is.
Correct.
And the winner was Best of Bordeaux, who goes around in the Silver Slipper at Rosehill on Saturday as well. And he's right in the market there. Look, that day you just had to be on the fence and you had to be leading, really. He was the only one in the small field to be off the fence in run, and he was also back near last. I thought he did well to get into second, and that was off the back of a really nice trial as well. They get the blinkers on for this, so there's a bit of intent. I think this is their last-ditch attempt to get him into a Blue Diamond, because they don't actually have many in the Blue Diamond. I think they've only got one that's accepted. So, look, he draws out wide here, which is normally a positive down the straight. I think he's got quite a good last, 400, 600 metre burst. And I think if he can get to the outside, he'll run a big race here. And we've seen the Sydney 2-year-old form already stack up. We saw Revolutionary Miss come down and win the Phillies prelude last week. So Just trusting that Sydney form to be a little bit stronger here, and I think he can run a nice race at around that $14 quote RAKOMELO.
Very good. I'm going to play 2 horses, speaking of the Silver Slipper, as my best value bets of the day. This is race 6 on the card, the Group 2 for the juveniles. I'm going to have something on horses down the bottom. Number 14, EBHAAR, and number 15, CYTHERA. I think that's how you say it. They're currently $10 and $8 respectively with tab.com.au. I thought this favourite was the obvious horse to beat, but short enough. This is Queen of the Ball, and this was her winning last start in the Widden Stakes. It's notable to point out that EBHAAR actually started the even money favourite in this race, and Queen of the Ball was double figure odds. You can see her leading in the in the yellow colours there. EBHAAR, just nothing really went right for her during the run. She was way too keen in the run. She weakened out to run second last. Hard to tip her confidently after a race like that. There is some sort of query out of her debut run as well, with Baldinho, the horse that ran second, since failing to flatter. But I'm just really respecting that SP. Even money in a Group 3 race like that deserves respect. She's been back to the trials. Peter and Paul Snowden, they generally have a fair idea of what they're doing with horses like this. So willing to give her another chance, given she's 5 times the price that she was last start. The other one is CYTHERA. This was her, I think, last weekend, perhaps the week before, back on the 5th of February, so 2 weeks ago now. If the replay plays while I'm talking. This is the Lonhro plate. She sat outside the leader here for Tommy Berry, another one for Peter and Paul Snowden. She didn't set the world on fire here, but I thought she did a good enough job. The second horse is a little bit unlucky, but it's a decent form line, I think, beating Lady Laguna. And from barrier 2, she's going to get a suck run. So I just thought of the odds. It was worth having something on those 2 horses to roll this favourite, which is currently around $2.50. So they're the way I'll go in the Group 2 Silver Slipper in Sydney on the weekend. All right, let's get on to the Group 1, Trent, the feature of the day in Melbourne, the Group 1 Black Caviar Lightning Stakes. Talk us through your thoughts.
Yeah, well, like I said off the top, it's a fantastic race. You've got Nature Strip, Eduardo, Masked Crusader, Gitra, the Inferno, the Astrologist, what's that? Home Affairs and Profiteer, the 3-year-olds down the bottom. Aside from a bit of a speed bump, which should be a little bit tricky down the straight. I thought Eduardo is probably the quickest horse early. I think he'll probably lead. Nature Strip, he's obviously a very fast horse. He'll be right there, but I wouldn't be surprised to just see him just sit on the hindquarters of Eduardo and not really try and eyeball him the whole way down the straight. Profiteer is very fast. Home Affairs is quick as well. They'll be right up there. The Astrologist, Gitros, what's that? Midfield just worse. And then Masked Crusader and the Inferno will be right out the back as usual. Look, it'll probably come as no shock that I've tipped Nature Strip. Everyone knows how much I'm a huge fan of him, but I think he deserves to be favourite here. I think he deserves to be the one to beat. Won this race last year. This is definitely a stronger race than last year, but he had such a good prep. Last prep, he won the Lightning. He went up and won the Concorde over 1,000 meters. Won the Everest. Won the VRC Sprint Classic. I think he's still at the peak of his powers here, and he's just got that great record down the straight. He's 8 goes down the straight for 6 wins in a second. And I think that's going to hold him in good stead here compared to a horse like Eduardo, who he has had a few runs down the straight, but it was back when I think he was with a different camp. He was, completely in the wilderness before he kind of rejuvenated himself in Sydney. So there's not much between them, the two of them. Eduardo often has Nature Strips, just has Nature Strips measure over 1,000 meters early in their preps, but there's, normally less than half a length between them. I'm just thinking with that straight track prowess that Nature Strip has, I think he can overcome that, and we know his level, and they're all going to have to run their PBs to beat him. So look, I found it hard to tip against Nature Strip, and I'm going to be hoping that he can deliver for us again.
You tipping Nature Strip, some things just never change. Have you tipped him the last couple of times that Eduardo's beaten him?
I was definitely with him in the Everest. I was super keen on him in the Everest, and he won. The start before that, potentially, yes. I think Eduardo just got the better of him in the shorts over 1,100 meters. Like I said, I think Eduardo was first up there. I don't know. I just feel like down the straight, it's a little bit more advantage Nature Strip compared to Eduardo, who likes to just eyeball Nature Strip the entire way around a bend and just kind of outmuscle him late, get Nature Strip a little bit keen if he can, and just pounce late. So I think down the straight's really going to suit Nature Strip because he can do his own thing, get into his own rhythm. And when he does that, he's very hard to beat.
A couple of early market moves with tab.com.au. Master Crusader, $10 into $8.50. And Profiteer is a really interesting one, $16 straight into $8. Anything you can kind of offer your thoughts on there?
Yeah, I guess Master Crusader's he's just got that X factor, that big booming finish about him. And people, they probably can't see him going around double figures ever because he's just such a good horse. I just thought 1,000 meters was potentially going to be too sharp for him. It just depends how far back he gets. If they go fast, which is very likely here with the likes of Eduardo, Profiteer, he's just going to be so far off them. And over 1,000 meters, that's going to be super hard to catch for Master Crusader. I do think the straight track will suit him because he's just got that big booming finish on him, but I'm not sure where he gets to over the 1,000. Profiteer is an interesting one as well. He is a 1,000-meter horse, and he's never quite lived up to that promise he showed as a 2-year-old. Did win over this track and distance. He was 2 from 2 at this track and distance, but won over, I think it was a listed race during Cup week before a spell. He's trialled very, very well, but they've been teaching him to settle in his trials, which I thought was a little bit interesting. Whether that occurs when the gates open and he starts racing again, we'll see. But you could make a case for most of these. Like Geers won this race 2 years ago, beating Nature Strip comfortably. He arguably should have beaten Nature Strip and Eduardo when they met first up in Sydney last time. Just not sure where he's at. He hasn't trialled very well. His run before a spell, when he's running the Everest, were both quite poor. And then you've got Home Affairs, like we mentioned as well, with J-Mac taking the ride there. He's the boom colt. The win in the Coolmore Stud Stakes was enormous. It was very fast time. It was actually, I think I was looking at the raw times today, and it was just a fraction faster than Nature Strip's VRC sprint over the same track and distance a week later. So he's good enough, but he was found out a little bit in the Everest when he took on the big boys. But again, he's trialled up enormously as well, and it wouldn't see any shock. It wouldn't shock to see him take that next step as well. So you could make a case for so many of these, but I just kept coming back to the best sprinter, the best horse in the race, and that's Nature Strip.
Yeah, and for those tuning in now, we've got a few more people that have tuned in now compared to when we were talking about it earlier. But myself and Trent were saying that there's a lot of reasons that J-Mac would have been riding Home Affairs rather than Nature Strip here. And one of them almost definitely isn't the fact that Nature Strip is a worse horse than Home Affairs. So there's a lot to play out for J-Mac's career. Obviously, that connection with Coolmore. There's potentially a stud service fee worth around $80,000 a year on offer to him, as the jockey who piloted him to his first Group 1 victory. And if he has ambitions to go to Europe in the future, then a connection with Coolmore is definitely going to serve him well. So several reasons that are probably gone into that decision to ride Home Affairs here. But Trent, you're sticking with your lover boy, Nature Strip on top in the Group 1 Lightning Stakes. Betting strategy? Straight on the nose?
Yeah, I think if the prices allow you to, you could almost end up saving or chopping on Eduardo. It's about 260, 420 at the moment. There's a scenario where you potentially could do that to get back a little bit of your money, just because I think Eduardo's the logical danger. And like I said, he has beaten Nature Strip over 1,000, 1,100 fresh in the past. And if you came out and did it again, you'd be starting to think, well, why are you not just backing him to beat Nature Strip when they're fresh? So I think they're clearly the two main chances, and it'll take something really special for one of them to get knocked off. But yeah, main bet Nature Strip.
Who have you got? A quick one. I know we've gone through the race, but who have you got leading this race?
I have Eduardo. I think he's quick. He's definitely quicker out of the machines than Nature Strip. Nature Strip is not super quick out of the gates. He just musters quite well over the first 100, 200 meters. So I think Eduardo will jump in front, and I think Jamie Carr might be happy to just let him go and just sit on his hind quarter, not get into an eyeball race with him where Eduardo starts to, get him keen and gets into a dogfight with him. I think Nature Strip's best when he's doing his own thing. So I think Eduardo leads.
Profiteer, yeah.
But then they've been riding him in his, you might not have seen his trials, but they've been riding him, back and getting him to finish off his trial. Super doing that. But, they've tried to do that before, and then he gets into a race and he goes a million miles an hour. So, yeah, I did have him sitting second with Nature Strip, and then Home Affairs. He could, come come across. I think he'll probably take a sit as well at 1,000 meters, but he's drawn out wide as well. Wouldn't shock to see him, right up there as well. So probably Eduardo to lead, but any 4 of those could lead, and you wouldn't be shocked.
Well, just the 9 runners, but a fascinating race. Can't wait for it. Could see fireworks early. It's an absolute cracker, and just leads into the rest of the autumn coming up in both Melbourne and Sydney. All right, that'll do us for this week. Trent, thanks for joining us once again. There's a comment coming through before. Who is the lay of the day at both tracks? I'll pass to you first, Trent, while I try and find one.
As I quickly go through the fields.
I did see a horse earlier. I just got to try and remember what it was. I'm trying to remember. There was one horse I came across that I thought, this would be mine. Oh, it's not really labelled because it's currently a second favourite at $4.20, but I would be betting against Mr. Mosaic in race 2 at Rosehill. Rule of Law is currently about the $2.30 favourite. Mr. Mosaic's next in the market at $4.20-ish. I'll just double check with Tab that those are the prices. Don't want to get misquoted. Rule of Law is $2.40. Mr. Mosaic's $3.80. So I'd even be laying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's only 6 runners in the field, so they're only paying the first 2 places, I think. So if you're betting on Betfair and you wanted to lay something the place, I'd be laying Mr. Mosaic the place. He's won his first 2 starts this prep, but there's a very big glaring factor of 3 starts, third up from a spell for 0 placings. So I think he's definitely a horse best kept fresh. If that was gun to my head, I'd be laying him to place. Race 2, number 3, Mr. Mosaic. Trent?
Yeah, tough day to lay. I'll make it race 8 is Group 3 Elms. There's a horse called Corner Pocket, number 12. He's won his last 7 or something 6 for Lindsay Smith. He's put on a picket fence, but he's first up here at 1,400 meters in the hardest race of his career. And I think he's definitely not going to get his own lead from barrier 1. He's probably going to either have to take a sit or kick up and do a lot of work with some more established, faster horses around him. I just think he might be a little bit vulnerable in this race. The other one I could potentially lay is race 6, the CS Hayes, number 7, Pinstriped. Really like this horse. I just think he's too short in an open race. He's about $3.20 or so. I think he'll get better than that, but he's probably the one to beat, being said that. So, yeah, probably not one I can stamp a huge lay for the card, but those 2 look short enough for me.
Here's a question without notice. Let me just get the price so that I'm right about this.
Mm-hmm.
My question's going to be back or lay.
Okay.
Animo, $1.75, back or lay.
Oh, $1.75. I'd say back, but wait until you see something make ground. You got to be on the ball early. So if in the first few races, if you can see horses making ground and it's not a rail bias, then you can look to back him. But if it's the same as it was a couple of weeks ago and nothing's making ground and all the leaders on the fence are winning, I'd be a bit wary.
The unfortunate thing with that at Rosehill is that 2 of the first 3 races are a highway and a midway. So
yeah,
highway, we've got about 25 runners in the field. Terrific stuff.
Yeah,
just the way you want to kick off.
He was huge first up, and I think I've seen a few people that do a bit of yard watching in Sydney said that he paraded awfully in the first up run. He was heavy, he was sweating, he was kicking around. They said there was so much improvement to come. It wasn't funny. So, yeah, I think he'll be very, very hard to beat as long as the track's playing reasonably fairly.
Yeah, I'd be backing him. Animo, $1.75, $1.80. That'd be good enough for me, I think. But you can find all my thoughts, or you will find all my thoughts in our race-by-race previews, which will be up on racingbet.com.au. Trent, you've got a runner-by-runner preview of the Lightning already up on the site. And in the next, probably some point tomorrow morning, we'll have previews for both Flemington and Rosehill. Tips for every race, betting strategy, all for free on racingbet.com.au. Any other thoughts before we sign off for another week, mate?
No, that does us. Can't wait for the Lightning and see you again next time. Thanks, punters.
Beautiful. That'll do us. Thanks to tab.com.au for sponsoring this week's episode, and we'll be back to do it all again next week. See you then.